The Meadow of Revenge. Written by Corrupted, co-written by Day. Derek got up just like every morning, brushed his hair, and ate his breakfast. On the bus he met with his friend Gary. They were on their way to school. Derek entered the classroom and learned about triangulation and how it applied to drawing. He was great at drawing. Gary had taught him how to draw, and now he took classes and was the best in the school. This made him respected among the other students. Currently he was drawing his grandmother. She was a nurse and saved many lives, but her colleagues couldn't save her from her brain tumor, which turned into brain cancer. She had stayed half alive, in pain, but alive for 2 years before passing. She died last week, and it was hard for his whole family, but they had to move on. Through all his bad times, Derek had his best friend, Gary. Gary knew how it felt and didn't want Derek to feel the same way. So, Gary spent a lot of time with Derek, even though Derek hurt Gary some. Gary liked a girl in his school, and Derek asked her out and they dated till she moved away, so Gary felt very sad, but Derek never was there for him. Gary started hiding his emotions because of this. Gary wanted comfort, but his mom was always at work and Derek never cared about the way he felt, so Gary had to put on a fake smile to hide his pain he felt for so very long. Gary would usually cry himself to sleep at night. He knew it wasn't very man of him to do so, but who would know? No one ever asked how he was. They cared more about Derek than him. Gary felt alone most of the time because no one talked to him but Derek, and he was left out when there were group projects. Even though Derek considered Gary his best friend, Derek still didn't know a lot about Gary's life. Another thing Derek didn't know was how little Gary cared to keep his life. All the things that happened to Gary in his life have started to rack up, and this has made Gary give up hope more and more. One day Gary and Derek were working together because they were in the same class. Derek was an idiot, so he got Gary to do the whole assignment. Gary did do the whole thing, but what Gary didn't expect was for Derek to claim that he did the entire assignment for himself. Gary got so mad he wanted to kill Derek, and of course Gary didn't carry that expression on his face, but deep down he was enraged. Gary walked down the hall and was attacked by a few 10th graders. They took all his lunch money and his phone, then they shoved him in his locker. 2 minutes later Derek walked by. Gary yelled, "Derek, help, I am stuck in this locker." Derek said, "How did you get stuck in there?" Gary told him about the 10th graders. Derek laughed. "Sorry," he said unconvincingly, "I don't want to get on their bad side," and left. Gary banged and banged on the locker, crying the whole time until he broke out. Gary finally had enough. He was crying his heart out. Gary ran into the woods behind the school towards a steep cliff. Gary stood at the edge and thought if it was worth it, and he knew that his life was terrible, from getting abused and getting used. Without another thought he jumped off the cliff. As he fell, his life flashed before his eyes, and then, spat. That night Derek was sitting on his couch watching TV, going through channels. He stopped at one news station about a bunch of disappearances at some creek. When he flipped the channel there was just an image, something so horrifying words could only make it more comfortable. In a split second the image was gone, and some true crime show appeared. Derek was mortified. He felt frozen. He had felt like it was really there with him, like he could just reach out and touch it. He sat there for what felt like an eternity, until Derek finally fell asleep. The next day Derek had to get ready for school. He still felt the image in the back of his mind. He was a little more on edge, looking behind doors and corners. After he was finished getting ready, he ran to his bus stop, making sure to look behind him. When the bus arrived, Derek was relieved. He sat down and let out a big sigh. Derek soon realized that Gary was not at the stop and was nowhere to be seen on the bus. Derek was confused but shrugged it off, assuming he was sick or something. Later Derek got to school, and his teacher was doing attendance. Derek told his teacher that Gary wasn't here today. She asked, "Who's Gary?" Derek was confused, but the teacher continued on. Derek started asking everyone if they had seen Gary, but yet again, no one knew who Gary was. Derek thought this must have been some trick, but everyone had no clue who Gary was. By this time Derek completely forgot about the image and was wondering about Gary, so Derek decided to go to his house after school when Gary's mother was home. After Derek got off the bus, he walked to Gary's house. Derek got to the door and knocked on it, then Gary's mother came out. Derek asked her about Gary, but she didn't even know who he was. Derek was shocked. He couldn't believe that Gary's own mother didn't even remember him. He ran home and logged onto his computer and looked at the photos of him and Gary from 2 years ago, but Gary was nowhere to be found. But there was something in the background that was too hard to see. It was in every picture Derek had thought Gary was in. Derek ran up the stairs and asked his mom if she knew who Gary was. "Of course, dear," said Derek's mom. "He was your imaginary friend back in 4th grade." Derek turned around and walked down the stairs and went to his room. He sat on his bed thinking. All of a sudden, he was in a large meadow at midnight. The figure from the pictures on his computer was there, looking at him. From the other side of the meadow, all of a sudden, the horrifying monster bolted at him at full speed, and got halfway across the meadow. Then Derek woke up covered in sweat again. The next night he had the same dream, except the monster started bolting from halfway across the meadow. It was getting closer. It was only about 10 feet away. And he could hear it say "no remorse" in a raspy deep voice that reminded me of gravel crunching. He woke up shaking. At art class the next day he found himself scribbling all over a canvas. To others it was a mess. To him, it was a monster. He left the class in a hurry. At PE he was running a lap around the school, and he saw the monster in the parking lot next to a car, much like Gary's mom's car. Then it disappeared. Derek went home and got in bed dreading his reoccurring nightmare. Derek whispered to himself, "It's just a nightmare and it can't hurt me." He didn't know just how wrong he was. He found himself in the meadow. The monster was only 10 feet away. It slowly walked toward him. He tried to run or move at all, but he couldn't. He told himself, "It's just a dream, I'm fine," in a panicked voice. The monster was right in front of him. The monster said in a distorted voice, "The pain you caused me, the things you've done, you will pay," and grabbed Derek by the throat and yanked. He woke up and the monster was attacking him. He kicked the monster in the stomach. Derek ran across the room, tripping on his stool and his game console. As he runs to the door, it slams in his face and locks from the outside. He is trapped with the monster and turns and faces it. Derek says, "Get away from me." The monster continues to walk forward. He grabs Derek and rips his arm off. Derek starts bleeding, and the screams are music to the monster's ears. The monster grabs a nearby pocket knife and starts cutting Derek's gums to better yank his teeth out. He pulled Derek's teeth out, all of his teeth. To avoid Derek from drowning in his own blood, he tilts Derek's head forward. He cuts Derek's nose out and stabs the knife in his eyeball. He rips Derek's intestines out and places them on Derek's face and rips his stomach out and throws it on the ground, and it starts oozing on the floor. Derek was dead, and for the first time ever, Gary was happy. The end.